not to bow to Common Core curriculum, which really doesn't have our children's best in mind. It's all, let's keep it average. Why would the government want to keep it average, by the way? Have you ever thought about that? And why does the Common Core talk only about job readiness and college? Right? They want to create good workers who are going to pay taxes. That's what they want. That's what it's about. What are we about? Raising up great, intelligent, educated human beings who are, as Melanie said, by the way, going to be great citizens and going to be great employees and great employers. How many of you run businesses and cannot find someone who can put a sentence together? Cannot find someone who knows how to do addition and subtraction without a machine? Believe it or not, people were able to do all that 50 years ago and do it better than we do it now. One final thing. We all say, well, the government had to get involved in science, otherwise we wouldn't have gotten to the moon, right? Whole Sputnik thing. Have you heard that argument? That once the Russians got to got into space, Kennedy had to start the government into, this is the roots of STEM. Every scientist who worked on the space program and got a man on the moon, every one of them was educated before Kennedy's Space Science Initiative. Now, I was going to say it was the last thing. Common Core claims that they are geared to compete internationally, right? Have you ever heard that? They used international standards to create their standards. That is the biggest lie ever. Look at Taiwan, look at South Korea, look at Japan, look at China. Our minimum science requirements for Common Core are way, 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 way below anything that is expected in those countries. England and Australia recently conducted studies comparing their education system, which is basically what Common Core is, with Asia. And both England and Australia have decided we're going back. We're going back to the old way, where you actually memorize multiplication tables, where you actually have to do mathematics by hand before we start to allow you to use a computer, a calculator. So, if the rest of the world is going away from this direction, why are we moving towards it? And why, by the way, are we lowering our standards? If we have a high mark, and we say, Joey, you're going to study calculus. I don't care what you say, Joey. And Mommy and Daddy, I don't care what you think about Joey's ability to do it. We're going to make him get to calculus. At some point in his life, it may be that Joey all of a sudden clicks on and he loves math because he was made to do it. If at 14 or 15 years old a kid hits a wall in mathematics and says, I can't do this, and we say, okay, well, you don't have to do it, we have just done him a huge disservice. Do we really know whether or not Joey or Susie can do it? We have a young lady who graduated from our academy last year. One of my best students, not because she had a 4.0. But when she was in the public schools, she was told she'll never go to college. ADD, ADHD, all kinds of things going on with this young lady. Okay. Never go to college. They brought her to Hillsdale Academy. And I can tell you, tears every day. Every day, tears. I can't do this. Mom and Dad, I'm not sure if this was the right thing. 7th grade to 12th grade, 6 years, a very, very hard period in this girl's life. She's now studying nursing at St. Mary's College, University of Notre Dame. And she's doing brilliantly. Because we would not take the prognosis of the public schools as gospel. because we knew that given the opportunity, these kids can do a whole lot more than we think. And besides that, it's our job, it's our duty as adults, as parents, to give them, to bring into their lives the very best we can possibly bring to them, so that they might be the kinds of great citizens our nation desperately needs. If we don't do this, if we don't go back, we're just going to be lost in a morass of ignorance. I don't have any real opinions on this. Thank you. Questions?
Do you know much about the H.R. 5 bill that's in Congress right now?
I'm glad you brought that up. I
Because
brought a flower yarn on it.
Fabulous, because before you start saying anything, I just want to say that I was reading on it through your emails, which I received. You're saying to vote no on it, correct?
Right.
I have a very good friend, neighbor, who is good friends with Fred Upton. She contacted him because she knows how to feel about Common Core. She contacted him, got a number to a gentleman by the name of Nick. Nick is telling her that she should be requesting a yes vote. And copied a link to me, and this happened this afternoon, and I have yet to be able to really look on this website. And what I read last night, the H.R. 5, is literally taking away the parental rights. Am I not correct?
No, you are correct. Here's
Okay.
the problem. This is not a Democrat and Republican issue, okay? This is an elite versus grassroots issue. The elite in this country, like Arne Duncan and Jeb Bush, think we don't know what we're doing, and that they need to set the rules for the rest of us on how to educate our children. My first answer to a congressman who says anything about reauthorizing No Child Left Behind, which is what H.R. 5 is, it's to reauthorize this version of federal oversight in education. The first answer is the federal government has no constitutional role in education. So there is no reauthorization that is constitutional. Because some people, Bill Bennett, some of these guys are saying this is the conservative version of No Child Left Behind. There is a piece in there that lets states opt out. But the opt-out reads, we will allow states to opt out. So I have a problem with allow. Again, the power is suggesting that they control us. And then it's if they do this and this and this and this. And so the rules about how states can not get federal intervention are defined in that law. So to me, the only answer is repeal No Child Left Behind. Repeal. And that would get the federal government's role in education out of the way. Some people think that they're saying this reauthorization would get rid of Common Core. Well, if the feds want to put their money behind a different set of standards, then it's not called Common Core, which some of these guys think, well, let's just call it something different and they'll fool all of us. And okay, but they're still defining it, and they have no right, the federal government has no right and no involvement. Now, I caveat that to say, block grant the money back to the states, no strings attached. Because there is money around No Child Left Behind and the ESEA law, Title I, the other money. And so it's not a huge percent of our money, but it is substantial to schools. And so if they block grant it back to the states, then we get to manage how we use the money. So I'm not saying turn off the money completely, although at some point they probably ought to, but still, don't tax us for it in the first place. Just send us our money back. So that is the line that is going around Congress right now. The sneaky part was this H.R. 5 was passed through Education Committee, the House Education Committee, with no hearings. Heritage and Cato Institute are both our advocates in Washington that are watching this for us, and both did a very good analysis of the law. I'm a little disappointed in Heritage. They think there is we're going to have to settle on a compromise version, and they're working on what that looks like. It's not H.R. 5. But Cato Institute is taking the position that I am, that the only correct answer is repeal. And I believe that if we, the people who are upset about federal intervention in education, which no matter if your school leadership has adopted or adapted or is a little interested in Common Core, they still don't want the federal government passing down rules and paperwork and intruding in their right to decide how to run the school. So I think we should be able, there's a teacher group as well, the badass teachers. If you see them on the internet, on Facebook or anything, go and start talking to them, because the teachers don't like this either. And not the NEA, the National Teachers Union, they like it because they're members of this elite, right? I mean, so it's real teachers and real parents and real grandparents and real principals. They don't want federal intervention. So I think we should really band together to get that killed at the federal level, and this is the time while the iron's hot, and then figure out what we want to do within our own states. Our vision, the Stop Common Core team in Michigan, we're shifting to freedom to learn, restoring freedom to learn. Our vision is that we can have progressive education in Michigan if we want, but it shouldn't be the law of the land. We should be allowed to have robust public classical academies and robust private classical schools, and we should be able to have our teachers educated to be able to teach in either environment. We should have materials available to help us, and we should have an assessment that fairly, non-politically, judges kids' ability to do math and report history. So we have this vision that we're going toward that goes back to local control, and we're really trying to chop this a little at a time. So tomorrow, because they're talking about voting on this Wednesday, and one of the flyers up here tells you about it.
I was told, I asked tonight, my friend, I said, when do they plan on voting on it? Because I have read on Facebook that it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And she said, Wednesday, possibly Thursday, and it's very possible there's going to be amendments to this as well. But just so people understand, HR 5 is also known as the Student Success Act.
Right, Student Success Act. I love it.
Which,
You know, if you call a pig, right, what do we do? Put lipstick on a pig, whatever that's
it's
it.
big.
Right.
Did I read correctly that not only is it, I mean, at the first go, I think it was the title line that stated public schools. And as you start reading it, then it starts hitting private and religious. And then throughout it, I read they're controlling homeschooling.
Okay, so what they want to do, they want to advocate that, for example, Title I money is portable. Okay, so the idea here is that if your child qualifies for Title I, which is a certain level of poor or disadvantaged or needing special services, that you would get that money and you could take it to your school. But this is the Trojan horse, guys. That's why Hillsdale College doesn't take public government money at all. It's because the minute you take the government money, you start to have to follow their rules. And so by attaching the money to the child, when the child goes to Kalamazoo Christian, now Kalamazoo Christian has to follow certain rules that they don't have to follow now because there's no rule. In Michigan, that private schools have to follow anything about the state law and education. This is also true for homeschool. And, you know, some of the homeschoolers have been fooled. Well, I just want to have my kid take band at the local high school. So they enroll them in band. And the minute they do that, the school can start attaching rules to them about taking the state assessment or any sort of things. And now the homeschool kids are getting drawn in, which means they're into the data collection, they're into all of that. And what I really fear is that these assessments are going to be so difficult and worded in ways that kids who are not taught those words, that structure, will do badly. And all of a sudden it'll look like kids in private schools and classical academies and homeschools aren't learning what they need to learn. And, you know, if you change the ruler to something that's totally inappropriate, measures the wrong stuff. It's like, you know, Hillsdale College still teaches kids to be teachers, but they closed their school of education. because the ruler that the state was using to judge them and compare them to other schools of education made them look bad. Because it had things like, how many minority students do you have and how many minority faculty you have? Well, Hillsdale doesn't count. So they turned in, we don't know. And then so they got a 0. And so they had some list of these things that they didn't care about because they don't really matter. And so that when you looked at this, about 6 years ago, I was looking at the list and here's Hillsdale College down like bottom, 6th from the bottom or something. I was like, how is that possible?
And it's important to understand that we stopped training kids for certification by the state, so that no student who comes out of our education department has to worry about state certification at all. We have doubled the number of students who are in our education department. They are students who don't, say, fail in math or science and history and say, well, maybe I can teach. What we have done is begun to attract and actually insist upon high GPA students from their majors who love the subject, who love to work hard and love to think. These are the kinds of teachers we're producing. 25% of our graduating class last year went on to teach. All of them had, and many of them study with me down at Hillsdale Academy, had 3, 4, 5 job offers. So people told us, well, if you stop offering state certification, first of all, no students will be in the education department. And second of all, they can't be hired. And we have shown just the opposite. We've doubled the number of kids in the education department, and all of them are being hired. So you see, the thing is that what good schools want are excellent, well-trained teachers who know their stuff. And this rubber stamp of certification does not tell you that. It tells you that you've jumped through some hoops, but it doesn't tell you that it doesn't tell you that the person knows their stuff. Think of this. Every teacher in the city of Detroit is certified. Every teacher in the city of Chicago is certified. What does certification mean? Nothing. If certification of a teacher were the same as, say, licensing of a physician or of some other professional, I would say we should do that. Because there were definite testing that's done, things that you have to pass in order to stay a doctor, right? My brother-in-law is a physician, he's always taking tests. He's a pulmonologist, always taking tests. That's how he keeps his job. Are teachers as important as physicians? Absolutely. And they should have to take tests. They should have to be the best, not the worst, but the best prepared for being in the classroom. And in order to stay in that classroom, they should have to take difficult tests.
Do you know that for certification for elementary teachers in the state of Michigan, you do not have to know how to teach a kid to read? They have requirement for one reading class, and the teacher of the year testified to the House Education Committee, and she's 15 years, a 3rd grade teacher, which is where right pivotal for a lot of kids, and this is really where you're supposed to really get reading. And they asked her how many classes to how to teach reading she had in college, and she said, if I had any, I don't remember. And it turns out the certification is 1. And do you teach kids how to read in 1 class? Really? So it's on the job, and then it's a question of how well on the job. And they certainly don't teach how to use phonics to teach kids how to read. All right, another question.
I wondered if you just talk a little bit about, the classical curriculum and how kids have done on the standardized tests.
Oh, yeah.
And people, some concerns have been mentioned, we don't want to be teaching to a test and have the
Yeah.
test be the end goal.
Right.
And
We do not teach to tests at all. The Iowa Test of Basic Skills is the standardized test we give our students in May of every year. And in May of every year, we say, oh, it's test time. All right. We have our high schoolers take the PSAT in 9th and 10th grades in preparation for the 11th grade SAT and ACT tests, all right? And our students do exceedingly well, all right? We rank consistently out of 800 high schools in the state of Michigan among the top 3 to 5 high schools in the state of Michigan. And remember, this is farmers' kids, small industry kids. These aren't, Hillsdale College professor kids. And by the way, that doesn't happen genetically. I have professor kids at the academy who are not all that bright. Okay? It depends upon what the families desire for their children. We teach no AP courses at Hillsdale Academy. None. Okay, so just let that sink in for a minute. No AP courses. So we're independent of all the political correctness and all the silliness of AP. Now, we know that AP can give some value to one of our graduates, so we let them take the AP exams. All right. So our kids at the end of the year, we'll say, do you want to sign up for AP exams? They'll say, yeah, I'll take it, I'll give it a try. To get credit on an AP exam, you have to have a 3, 4, or 5. So they scored on 5 points, you have to have a 3, 4, or 5. 93% of the time, Hillsdale Academy children, students, get a 3 or above. 93% of the time without AP courses. Michigan, 66% of the time. The global, 60% of the time. So why is it that we're able to do that? It's because every day, all the time, we hold high standards for it. All the time, every day, high standards. We had a young man, 2.7 GPA, from Hillsdale Academy, go to Alma College. Nice college, liberal arts college here in Michigan. 2.7. His first semester, they hired him in the remediation center to teach other students how to take notes. And for every set of notes he brought in, they paid him $20. And he came back and said, Dr. Calvert, I'm making money. This is a 2.7 GPA. I could get a 3.3 GPA into the University of Michigan. Whereas the local Hillsdale High public school can't get close to it with a 3.9. Why is that? Because the University of Michigan knows what we do for and to our students at Hillsdale Academy. And they come and they recruit. All right. And again, some of these farming kids, they know how to work. They know how to work. It's some of the more professional moms, don't you know who I am kind of stuff. How dare you give Susie an F? Susie earned an F. She's got to work harder. Sorry. Okay? Thing is, it's the hard work and determination we're going to do this. That young lady I talked about at St. Mary's at Notre Dame, she was just touching on a 3.0. St. Mary's looked at her, looked at the quality of her work, talked with her, and they bent over backwards to make sure that she was able to afford going to school there. Colleges and universities, they're interested in really good students. They don't care what GPA they have. And what the Common Core does is it reduces our children to numbers and metadata and all kinds of stuff that does not treat them as human beings. It treats them as subjects of the government, not as citizens. And this ought to scare the bejeebers out of anyone left or right in this country. But I'm just amazed that we're allowing this to happen. And I'm unfortunately pretty sure these bills, not only in Washington, but in Lansing, are going to pass.
We do have some good ones.
We do. Because
Other questions?
raise them up.
I tried to do an opt-out form, and I brought it to the elementary school, Well's Creek Elementary for it. And the principal said she didn't understand what I was after and what I meant by this. and we needed to have a meeting, and I said, I just need you to sign that you received it, and I don't want my child to take any of the tests that are in that. And she's ignored me. As luck would have it, my son was sick on count day. And he truly was, I didn't know it was count day. And they are now after me to give them in writing that he was sick, that he is a student, and I'm just waiting for the principal to call me so that we can have our meeting.
So Portage Schools,
Yeah, Portage. And I
call
also,
Terry Novaria on the board. We have been advising boards, this opt-out, if anybody's seen it, was written for us by Thomas More Law Center, pro bono, thank you very much, Thomas More. And it's legally researched based on Michigan law. And in Michigan, we have great protections as parents. And you are legally permitted to opt your children out of these things. So there's in data collection but just the state assessments is one piece that you can just opt them out. And schools need to follow the law. And we're getting a lot of pushback. Schools are by law required to administer the tests, but there is not a law that says all kids have to take the test. And that's where it comes in. But they're doing this pushback, there's a lot of gamesmanship going on. I'm not exactly sure why at this point, because they won't lose money. It takes 3 years of 5% or more of kids not taking the test for it to currently impact them in terms of money. Part of it, I think, is this control, who's the power players. We have advised schools, and some in the state have written policy that says our school board acknowledges the parent's right to opt out, and we direct the school administration to find an educational alternative activity for kids during test time. And it's a simple policy. We're trying to get one through Portage. Terry's asked them, Joanne Wilson has asked them. We need a little more momentum to that. But when you meet with them, it's like, well, you don't want to break the law. And the law is on my side here. So let's just, and the other thing I get is like, why do you want to make a big deal out of it and maybe end up in the paper and have this big drama when all you have to do is honor my request? And, but some of what Portage does when I was on the board, that's right.
well, and I was told by the Portage West Middle School, I don't know who's the principal or the assistant principal, that this form is not legal and it can be used. And he didn't even see the form.
Well,
You
just tell them
telling me that
what,
I can't use
you
it.
say, if anybody who throws the word legal around to you, ask them, please tell me what law you are citing, or give me your written legal document in writing, because that's what that is, and it's got Thomas More on the back of it, and they will stand behind it.
I just wrote a simple letter that stated, as parent and primary responsibility of my child, my children will not be taking any form of standardized assessment test. Please honor my wishes, thank you. Haven't had a problem.
Are they allowed to
You can try that.
have it affect my kids' grades? Because
Not their grades, and there's no policy in Portage schools that it affects grades. I've heard that from 5th grade to middle school, they are trying to say that it affects whether they could get into the advanced math classes or something like that.
Yeah, well, my son is in math, advanced ELA and math, and they are using like some of the district assessment tests as part of his grade.
But they
And
can't use it.
I'm thinking it's a district assessment, not
Right.
my child's assessment. So how can they do that into his grade if we have to?
Well, it's policy. If they have policy that says that, then that's what they do. But there's no policy that says that they can use the state assessment. Now, some schools have, in order to get your diploma, you have to take the 11th grade state assessment. And what we're advising, we've had quite a number of parents just opt out and say, I forego the diploma, on the grounds that what Ken's been describing, that high-achieving students with a good transcript are going to be able to overcome that lack of a piece of paper. But that's really not, it's like the certification. I mean, you've already demonstrated your ability to learn and perform in the school environment, that having that piece of paper is silly when they're putting this kind of pressure on. And most of the universities now are beginning to understand that issue, because homeschoolers have the same issue.
Yeah.
You know, if they want a state certified degree, that certification of high school completion, they have to have their kids take the state assessment, and they don't want to do that. Because again, that puts their kids' data into the system, which is part of what they don't want to do. Helpful?
It is, thank you.
You have my contact information if
I
you.
do, I have that right now.
Can you tell me a little bit more about maybe the history of this new math coming through? I mean, is it just based on Common Core standards that this new math?
No,
was
actually, it
created,
started
or-
before that. The new math, Chicago math is what it was called, and it was things like, well, you know, in the elementary school, talking about, thinking about math rather than doing math in these
Ellen,
alternate methods.
Can I say something really quick?
Yeah.
It's not the math department, University of Chicago math.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the education department, University of
That's a
Chicago.
very
math,
good,
which is
because the math department, Chicago math, which was used in high schools,
Was
which
great.
had the Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 model, was great.
Okay.
It was the, yeah, and it's confusing to a lot of parents because it's the same source, but it was at this time when they brought all this in, and here's the thing about these progressive ideas. Not that maybe we can improve the way we teach kids, but we shouldn't treat all our kids like guinea pigs and be experimenting on them in school without parental permission. If we have a procedure, a process for teaching that we know works, you shouldn't just throw it away. And I'm convinced that one of the big reasons this happens is because not just the progressive mindset, but you've also got the profit motive.
Yeah.
You know, if I can write a book that says that you can learn a better way using my technique and then sell a bunch of textbooks, you know, go convince schools and sell a bunch of textbooks, and especially if I'm a professor at a university and I do this, it doesn't, people don't say, well, where's your proof that it works? They just buy it and you get this momentum going behind it. And that's the thing that upsets me the most about Common Core. There's so much of it in there that's brand new. We don't know what it's going to do. So the math is evolutionary. There's a current thinking about integrated math in the high school level, that you teach algebra and geometry and trig and you just join them all together. And you know, okay, maybe that would work, but we've never done it before. And why, before that was invented at that time, and why do you think that's going to work and do better than teaching kids the way we've always done it? You should have to have evidence of success, and you have people volunteer into being your guinea pigs. You don't force it on them. And so that's an educational model that's become acceptable, and I think a lot of it is that profit motive. That's a big player.
How easy would it be for schools to adopt or adapt to the classical education model?
That's yours.
This is a big project. We have to remember that it took us about 120 years to get here. It's not something that we can get back to easily. 90% of teachers are not trained this way. My wife started in the education program at Miami University of Ohio, which was supposed to be the best education program in Ohio. And she quit after a year because it was so mind-numbingly just dull. It was not what she pictured education to be. And if this is the way teachers are trained to be, then we are in a world of hurt. Okay. So what a school needs to do, if you start off from a classical point with your mission and your convictions from the beginning classical, that's pretty easy. Well, easier, all right. If you're going to turn a ship around, like a nation, turn a nation around, this takes a lot of work. It's difficult, and it's going to get people upset. If you tell teachers that they're not up to snuff, and they're teachers, they're certified by the state, how can you say I'm not a good teacher? Okay. I love the children. And loving a child, that's fine, but that's not what a teacher does. A teacher is there to teach a child. Let the parents love them. So, what we have to do is to begin to transform a school's mentality. And that has to start with the board, It has to start with those who do the hiring and the firing. And then you begin to go through your teaching staff, and you say, are you able and willing to do this? And usually I find that there are always a couple of teachers who say, this is what I've been waiting for. Thank God. Okay. And then there are a couple of teachers who say, oh, I can't do this, but I've been here for 25 years. How can you say that we're going to change things? And that's where the board has to make some very, very difficult decisions. Now, you ask me, well, where are we going to find teachers? Well, I know a really fine college in South Central Michigan where you can find teachers. There's also great teachers coming out of Dallas, University of Dallas, out of Thomas Aquinas College. There are great teachers coming out of a number of different sources. St. John's University in Maryland and in New Mexico, producing people who know what we're talking about. I also would argue this, that there are people in your community who know how to do this, who never went for teacher certification because of what it meant, and are just waiting for a school like this to open, who can teach high levels of math or high levels of science, or who can teach children how to write well, who know their grammar. And they didn't do it because of what they saw happening in the schools and the lowering of the expectations. We find this everywhere we establish schools. 2 or 3 members of their teaching staff just coming out of the woodworks, and they end up being the stars because they've been waiting for this. You remember, maybe some of you don't, I do, 1980s, when Ronald Reagan came onto the scene. So many people were waiting for someone to hear what he had to say. And people who were Republicans and people who were Democrats thought, wow, finally, this is the guy. And not that he was perfect by any means, he didn't destroy the Department of Education, he should have done. But he was saying the kinds of things that were bringing Americans together. And that's what classical education can do. You know, education should not be this